For me, that was a very magical period when I was doing that. To be honest, being there is a little bit like being in a dream. Those breathtaking beaches and that extraordinary existence. On television, St. Marie appears to be the most effortless job. A crime neatly solved before the credits roll. Blue water, warm sand, sunset, and rum. Unfortunately, paradise turns into a trap for every investigator who visits. That was the site of Richard's killing. Humphrey ran away because he loved. Jack departed just in time for the island to engulf his sorrow. A life free of dread was ultimately Neville's choice. Why people depart is not the enigma. The island has a profound effect on each of them because of this. Coming to the paradise trap first. Speculative viewing has always been Death in Paradise's strong suit. A little island in the Caribbean, a picturesque police station, a weekly murder, and a British detective who appears completely out of place in the tropical setting. A local squad with first-hand knowledge of the arena. Until the investigator calls a meeting and lays out everything that everyone overlooked, the mystery appears insurmountable. You won't find a more reassuring TV formula than this one. It is precisely because of this familiarity that the departures seem so out of place. The majority of detective series guard their lead. The brand is the detective. People keep coming back because of the detective, featuring Huo, Vera, Sherlock Holmes, Columbo, and Morse. When a mystery series zeroes in on its protagonist, it typically doesn't let go. It was the inverse effect of Death in Paradise. Removing the middleman was the basis for an entire popular series. After 2 series, Ben Miller departed from the role he had played as Richard P. As Humphrey Goodman, Chris Marshall showed up and then departed as well. After assuming the role of Jack Mooney, Ardal O'Hanlon departed. Unlike any previous detective, Ralph Little remained as Neville Parker for a lengthier period of time. St. Marie was eventually abandoned by even he. The gadget was proved to be operational when Don Jalili, posing as M. Vin Wilson, showed up. It was going to ruin the show. It turned out to be the show's hidden weapon, though. Death in Paradise is more than simply a murder mystery series. That's the actual twist. The ritual serves as a substitute. Every single investigator shows up on the island with a hidden weakness. Too much rigidity is Richard. Humphrey causes too much mayhem. Jack is mourning. Almost anything can make Neville freak out. M. Vin is hostile, irritable, and emotionally distant when he gets there. They are not just handed cases by St. Marie. They can't help but touch the thing they're trying to escape because of it. They depart for that reason. This is not due to the show's lack of devotion. The reason being that the detective's journey is structured to conclude. Like a fish out of water, every detective shows up. After that, the island gradually teaches him to breathe. He will then be completely out of place in the narrative. The formula will no longer work unless the program releases him. Paradise had to murder Richard P. Since Richard P. despised Paradise, he was an ideal first-tier investigator. The joke was on that. Wearing a complete suit, he arrived from Britain with the demeanor of someone who took discomfort personally. The island's beauty seemed to irritate him, since it refused to act like London. He was irritated by the heat, the sand, the food, and the informality. But Richard had genius on his side. Due to the equilibrium, he worked. No matter where the show put him, he was physically inappropriate, emotionally distant, and socially awkward. On the other hand, he had pinpoint accuracy when it came to murder. St. Marie needed someone with his outlook, but he was a misery to be sure. The early show was shaped by Ben Miller's performance. There was no outward sign that Richard was friendly and likable. He unintentionally came across as prickly, formal, unyielding and harsh at times. Subtly, nevertheless, was a sense of isolation. He was ill-equipped to unwind, since doing so would entail relinquishing control. Because he was afraid of the emotional risks involved, he was unsure of how to fit in. Dear Saint Marie was both the remedy and the punishment for him. Almost against his will, viewers saw him soften over the course of 2 series. The squad started to make sense to him. He started to have faith in Camille. The island was more than just inconvenient and inefficient. He was beginning to realize its community, logic, and rhythm were all unique. Richard did not suddenly become an islander who loved lounging on the beach. Fans began to question what would happen if he remained, though, as he began to shift to an extent. Family matters prompted Ben Miller's departure. His personal life underwent certain changes that made it difficult for him to remain in Guadeloupe for the months that the production was filming there. Working on a show that seemed like a dream for viewers was actually rather challenging. Short filming days, intense heat, and months away from loved ones were all part of filming paradise on screen. However, a storyline challenge arose for the writers. What is the correct way to spell Richard Poole? You can't just let him fall head over heels for the island and then send him packing. Fans will wonder why he didn't return if you casually send him back to London. You can't act as if the man who despised Saint Marie abruptly accepted his feelings and moved on. That being said, the show pulled off the most astonishing stunt imaginable. He succumbed to it. In the 3rd series premiere, Richard P. was brutally murdered using an ice pick. It was a rather harsh decision for a cozy mystery show. A crime-solving detective turned killer. Dying on the floor was the man who had always provided an explanation for the crime. That choice accomplished double duty. It salvaged the show while crushing the hearts of fans. Because one thing was made crystal apparent by Richard's death in Death in Paradise. Nobody could get past a detective. The island served as more than just a picturesque office. It was a spot where tales could settle down for good. With that one decision, the show was free to change its direction. We had to kill Richard so that the next detective wouldn't have to deal with his ghost. He does that to some extent even now. His performance has been used as a yardstick for all subsequent detectives. Suit, rigidity, deadpan annoyance, unattainable standards. Richard assumed the role of the first spectre of Saint Marie, the man from whom all substitutes had to flee in order to hear music. Humphrey Goodman, the investigator who discovered a beating heart. On Death in Paradise, Humphrey Goodman has the most difficult task of any detective. He had to come right after Richard Poole passed away and make his supporters love him again. That task is very terrifying. The first lead has just been lost by the viewers. They were grieving Richard's loss, furious with the writers, and wary of anyone who could succeed him. Being overly similar would have made Humphrey feel like a knockoff. He may have ruined the performance if he'd been too unconventional. So, the authors portrayed him in a contrasting light. Richard refused to budge. Husband Humphrey was a total slob. Emotionally, Richard was glued. Humphrey was agonizingly honest. It appeared as though someone had accidentally dropped Richard into the Caribbean, and he was now waiting for an apology. To all appearances, Humphrey was the type of person who could stumble into a crime scene, apologize to the body, and still manage to solve the case before anybody else. Chris Marshall injected the part with charisma. Yes, Humphrey was ungainly, but he was far from icy, clumsy, nervous, kind, and strangely bright. That was him. His mind moved at a dizzying pace. Even if he appears disorganized at first, he will eventually make sense of everything. He proved, in a big way, that Death in Paradise could go on after a lead switch. Nonetheless, One of the show's most fundamental truths is exposed by Humphrey's departure. Every character, not just the performers, has it rough on the island. Behind Humphrey came personal anarchy. His marital bliss was eroding. His self-assurance took a hit. His very existence had unraveled. He didn't rehabilitate at St. Marie via flowery therapy talks, but rather through hard labor, supportive friends, and the gradual realization that he belonged someplace he hadn't expected. Compared to Richard, he appeared more at home in paradise for a time. He felt at ease among them. He took a liking to the island. He felt the comforting heat. He endeared himself to the squad. However, his story's emotional appeal was never solely about assimilating into St. Marie. It was all about discovering his true life goals. Nobody could have foreseen the impact that Marshall's departure would have on the franchise. Years later, Humphrey made a triumphant return in Beyond Paradise, an English spin-off that demonstrated something crucial and was subtly excellent. Leaving St. Marie won't turn off the audience if the detective is good. After Humphrey departed from the island, his tale continued. It grown. His departure differs from Richard's in that respect. Richard's departure signified a final chapter. Humphrey's was a case of coming to terms with possibilities. In order for the show to go on, one detective has to be cut, another quit, because the program learned its second survival technique from the character's discovery of something worth following. Every detective story doesn't have to end tragically. People outgrow paradise, unfortunately. That man, Jack Mooney, who departed before his sorrow became unflexible. A new sort of melancholy was accompanying Jack Mooney's arrival. Easygoing, amiable, chatty, and welcoming were his initial impressions, even before they understood he had